Hello and welcome to the Entrepreneurial Musician from Hits Academy, a newsletter, coaching service, podcast, and blog preparing today's musicians for tomorrow's realities. Today's episode is titled, Sometimes You Have to Bet on Yourself. Thank you to Parker Mouthpieces for providing the hosting for TEM. Parker Mouthpieces offers fine, customizable component mouthpieces for horn, trombone, euphonium, and tuba, including the Andrew Hitz Artist Model Tuba Mouthpiece. You can find out more at parkermouthpieces.com or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Shout out to everyone who has gone to tem.fm/newsletter and signed up for the Portfolio Career Playbook, the newsletter from TEM, which includes the weekly, or almost weekly, quartet of ideas. There was not one last week because I had a gig in Boston 2 weeks ago, and I had some stuff in LA this past week, and I'm going to Nashville in 2 days for some stuff. So it's been rather busy. But in general, there is a new quartet of ideas every week. You can go to tem.fm/newsletter not only to sign up, but also to see all of the previous issues. Okay, sometimes you have to bet on yourself. I am rewatching The Sopranos, which is an absolute masterclass. And as a side note, I didn't even put this in the script here. I discovered a podcast called Talking Sopranos, which is Steve Schirripa, who played Bobby Bacala, and also Michael Imperioli, who played Christopher Moltisanti. This was born out of the pandemic, but the two of them have an episode for all 90 episodes of The Sopranos, and they take you behind the scenes. It's this fascinating look into this like cultural phenomenon. They also have interviews before they get into the episode, sometimes with actors, sometimes with directors, sometimes with writers, sometimes with costume designers. It's this just fascinating peek behind the curtain of the creative process. I'm really loving it. That has inspired me to rewatch The Sopranos for a third time. I watched it in real time, and then I did watch it once after. But I have found out the backstory, which is what inspired this episode of Steve Schirripa, who got his big break in acting when he joined The Sopranos, as I said, Bobby Bacala, in episode 2 of season 2. Now, he was only paid $3,500, which at the time was the going rate for like a one-off appearance like this. Back then, this was filmed in, I think, 1998 and released in 99. He had to pay his own airfare and pay for his own hotel, and it took 3 days to shoot. He lived in LA, so this was not, this was not a minor expense. And like I said, it was just like a one-off. They only hired him for this episode, so this was not like, hey, you're this new recurring character. It's like, we want to hire you for this one episode, $3,500. You got to get here. You got to put yourself up. Period. His agent, who he joked on the show is not his agent anymore, told him not to take the job because they weren't paying his expenses, and his agent thought that was not showing a commitment to him. To say that would have been a tragic mistake for Steve's career and life is quite an understatement. He did such a great job in that first episode that he was quickly added as a full-time cast member and ultimately appeared in 53 episodes over the duration of the show's run and became a full-time character. So in TEM 158, which is a long time ago at this point, I talked about the idea of building versus maintaining in terms of your career, and I think that's worth visiting or revisiting rather right now. I was backstage at a Boston Brass show. This was, 12 years ago. And I was talking to Scott Hartman, who we had hired as an extra trombone for this gig. And Scott Hartman was in the Empire Brass. He now teaches at Yale. One of my mentors turned colleagues and friends, which is great because I was studying with him at Tanglewood when I was 14, and he was one of my heroes. He asked me what I was doing. This was in December. I told him my schedule over the next. We had 25 minutes to kill before the show. I gave him like the 3-minute version of what my next 2 weeks were, and it involved like flying in and landing on red eyes and then going straight to school to teach for 8 hours and then going right back out on the road with Boston Brass. Anyway, he said, Andrew, repeat after me. This was one of those lightning bolt moments in my life. He said, Andrew, repeat after me. And he said, no. And I said, no. Then he said, there, you are able to say that word. You need to start saying it to people sometimes. It was masterful. The way he said no, the inflection, it was like there was going to be more words. Then he was like, that's it, we're done. That's what you need to say. He then, and this is what has stuck with me for a long time, he said, Andrew, there are two phases of a career. There's building and there's maintaining. And he said, you are very much in the maintaining part of your career. He said, you have arrived. You are acting like you're in the building phase of your career, and it is going to run you into the ground if you don't figure out the difference between the two and start acting like you are in the maintaining phase. That was one of the handful of most powerful life lessons I've ever been given as a gift in my career. Because early, it's all about hustle. It's like saying yes to everything and then killing opportunities, this, that, whatever. And I was never going to get out of that phase until I either burned out, flamed out, or somebody like Scott was generous enough to tell me to knock it off. Now, getting back to Steve Sharipa, he was very much in the building phase of his acting career. Now, simultaneously, he was a very successful promoter in Las Vegas at that time. So he was very much in the maintaining phase of his promoter career in Vegas. But not in acting. He was in the building phase. This is important because you can be in different phases in different aspects of your career and life. I don't think there's any way that Steve would take that deal now, $3,500 to pay his own way to shoot for 3 days, even if that was adjusted to today's rate of like what we'll call it $5,000. Not after his run on The Sopranos, on Blue Bloods, and on countless movies. But back then, he bet on himself, and that was 100% the right move. And thank goodness for him and for all of us, because he was so wonderful on The Sopranos, that he didn't listen to that agent who thought that they were doing what they thought was best. That's what I was trying to say for Steve. But it turns out that would have been horrifically bad advice. Can you imagine if Steve had said no, and then someone else went in there, and then he gave up 53 episodes, didn't have an acting career to speak of? Boy, those what ifs can be fun, but they're usually not. That would not be a fun one. There is a little bit of a fine line, though, between betting on yourself and not getting compensated what you are worth for your time and talents. And figuring out which one is at play at any given time is really important. I wrote the following very short piece on TEM blog, and I've also posted it to LinkedIn, about a recent thing that happened to me. This was titled "Stop Giving Away Your Time and Talents," and it starts with a quote from Kim Garst. Quote, "If you don't value your time, neither will others. Stop giving away your time and talents. Value what you know and start charging for it." And then this part is me. I was approached recently by one of the big music publishers to appear on a music business panel. A really big music publisher. I was excited by the opportunity because I'm sure this panel will get some eyeballs. Fast forward, the panel has happened, and it did. When I asked them how much the appearance paid, they were surprised by the question and said they would inquire with the powers that be. They eventually let me know that they would not be able to offer any compensation and were apologetic. Side note, I wasn't surprised that they were not able to offer me any compensation. It seemed pretty clear that they were asking me to do this for free, but I asked. Back to this piece. The others on the panel were tenure-track college professors who will use this appearance in their tenure/promotion files, or industry leaders who are paid to represent their companies and their shareholders. But I work for myself. I can't get promoted, and I don't have shareholders. For the record, I do lots of things for no money. I have done countless hours of music business consulting for people who didn't even have a fraction of the head start that I had in the business and in life, and who would never be able to pay for my consulting. But providing labor for one of the really, really big music publishers for zero compensation beyond a promise of, quote, exposure, hard pass. One of my major income streams is sharing my experience from the last 25 years in the music business, and I have gotten really picky about when and where to give away my time and talent, as the opening quote talks about. If I don't value my own expertise and honor the years and years of struggle that went into earning it, then I can't expect anyone to either. And then I wrote at the bottom, Coda, if you are a multi-million-dollar company, stop asking people like me to work for no compensation. Thank you in advance. Narrator voice, they're not going to stop. Anyway, the bottom line here is that there can be a fine line between not getting compensated enough to do something, whether that compensation is monetary or other things, and betting on yourself. There is no hard and fast rule, but I find that I always know in my gut which it is, so long as I take some time to really analyze it from all directions and really just sit with it. My gut always knows. 13 years ago, when the entire non playing side of my career was just taking off, I would have jumped at that panel, zero hesitation. But now, I'm not saying it wouldn't have been beneficial for me to have appeared on that panel, but I simply can't work for free for people who can laughably afford it and then try to charge other people with literal fractions of that publishing company's budget. So I didn't. It is important to note that the world kept spinning, the panel happened without me and was well received, and I promise you that no one from that publishing company is sitting up at night wondering, or even wondered in the shortest, most passing moment ever recorded, what could have been if I had just been a part of that panel. But I feel good knowing that I made the right choice for me regarding this aspect of my career. Sometimes you have to bet on yourself, and sometimes you have to demand what is fair. And your gut will always know the difference if you listen to it. Okay, this week's quote, staying with the Sopranos theme. This is a wonderful quote from Michael Imperioli. He said, quote, "Stop and appreciate what you have today. Look at what you have with wider eyes, maybe with more compassion and more gratitude for the things that you do have and not the things you don't have." End quote. This goes for my life. This goes for my playing career. This goes for the non-playing aspects of my career. It goes for absolutely everything, because I have this. I've been so blessed, as a lot of you have been, right? And there's not a competition there. That's the beautiful thing. We each have our own pie, right? Like, it's not like because I was so blessed, you were blessed less. Nope, that's not the way that this works. I've just been so lucky, if you want to use that line instead, or that word instead, in the business and in life. But boy, I can tell you, when I have a setback, I've been struggling with some stuff professionally lately, which I'm going to get into in the TEM report. That's going to be hopefully coming out tomorrow as I record this for the TEM Patreon patrons. But but things are good. Things are really good. And there are some opportunities that I've hoped that were going to pan out that haven't. There are others that I've been surprised by. And so I can choose which one of those to focus on, because I don't care how big you get, how successful you get. If you choose, whether you actually actively choose this or just by default, if I end up focusing on the things I don't have, then that's a game I can't win. I just can't win. No one can win. It has nothing to do with me. Michael Imperioli can't win this. No one can. Yo-Yo Ma can't win this, right? Renee Fleming can't win this. And so I just have to stop and appreciate, have gratitude for the things that I have, and try and do something about the things I don't have, if they're even worth pursuing in the first place. So thank you to Michael Imperioli for that reminder, and I just thought that was a really cool story about Steve Schirripa, about how, and there were others on that show that took a much more traditional route. They auditioned, they got a part, and then you never know when, especially in a mob show, when you're going to get whacked, or when whatever. But yeah, they were hired as like, you are this part as long as it's here, and they were like, you need to come to New York for one episode. Turned into 53 episodes and a full-time gig that literally changed his life. So listen to your gut, bet on yourself, and just be thoughtful, and don't look back, right? That's the other thing, is don't look back. Make the right decision in the moment, and just because it doesn't work out doesn't mean that it wasn't the right decision at the time. That's called hindsight bias. That's topic for a different day. Thank you to everyone who is listening to my voice right now, who is watching on YouTube, who has supported me through Patreon, patreon.com/TEM podcast, for everybody who's suggested a specific episode to someone who has written me a nice note. Support comes in a lot of ways, and I appreciate each and every one of you. I wouldn't be here without you. And that is going to do it for another episode of The Entrepreneurial Musician.